Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Leader Lab. This is Leadership Shorts, quick thoughts to help you level up your leadership. My name is Chad Wright. I'm the founder of Forward Partners. I am joined by my partner in podcasting, Emily Grace Deal. Emily, I don't know why I use all three names, but I do. It's the dad in me who's just, I'm not angry, I promise. Anyway, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about how opposites attract.
Opposites attract. Okay, let's talk about that.
Often in organizations, you have a visionary who kind of drives everyone crazy with their constant flow of new ideas and things that we can do. And then you also, on the other side of that, the opposite is that practical person who drives everyone nuts by throwing those wet blankets on it and saying, nah, hold on.
We're not doing that new idea.
The practicality comes in.
Okay.
And then how do we balance both sides? How do we find that middle ground?
Because this is a dynamic we see in a lot of organizations. And towards the end, I want to get into our dynamic because I'm really curious. Like, I know I'm probably the visionary person. I don't know that you're the wet blanket person, though. You're a good mixture of the two.
I don't know where I'm at, but yeah, we'll get there.
Anyway, I do see this a lot in organizations, and it really creates a problem when we don't talk about it. Because what you have on one side is the visionary who probably does have a lot of good ideas. They're not all perfect, but a lot of good ones. And they're thinking these up and they're throwing them out there. And then the minute they're shot down, it feels terrible, right? If we don't have a way to discuss this. And then on the other side with the practical person, they're fear-driven too. They're more like, oh my gosh, I see how that new idea is going to wreck everything. And they're not thinking about this and this and this and this. And so they're jumping in to save the day.
Yeah.
And we don't realize as the visionary how much stress we're putting on the practical person.
Well, and in reality, you do need both. And both people should be able to see that and have that. Because when you open the ground for conversation, then you're like, okay, your vision can actually succeed and make it if you add that element of the practical, like how does this going to exist in the real world and how can we actually see it get there? Because otherwise, you can't have just one or the other. You do have to have both sides of that, both of those,
They're both valuable, but we lean so hard into just, here's the thing I'm good at. This is what I'm going to throw at everybody. And it's not helpful when we do that. And so this is where we've run into this so much with organizations that we developed what we call the practical visionary process. And so part of this is identifying the phase of where we're at with an idea. Are we in the visionary phase? Are we in the practical phase? And are we in the agreement phase? And so let's talk about these a little bit.
Okay.
The visionary phase, this is my favorite phase. Hey, any idea can be incredible. I love this. But this is we are dreaming about this. We are brainstorming. There are zero limits. We can come up with anything we want. And identifying it and say, hey, as long as we are in the practical phase, as long as we're in the visionary phase, we're not talking practical. We're not worried about how we're going to get it done. We're not worried about cost, budgets, people, nothing.
It can be as big as you want.
It can be as big as you want. And what this does by saying, hey, as long as we're in this phase, here's the only things we're talking about, is it causes the practical person to go, okay, I'm going to have my turn.
Yes.
I don't have to jump in and immediately forcefully shoot this down. I'm going to listen. And what's funny is by slowing down and listening, they're going to find more things that need to be thought about. But they're also then maybe going to get a little bit of that vision, right? A little bit of that.
Both of those sides can take notes. Take notes in this moment.
100%.
And write down all those thoughts.
Yes.
And work through it a little bit as they're dreaming and getting there. Because sometimes that brainstorming process, where you start, is not where you're going to land.
It's all over the place,
and so
right?
you have to get through all that anyways.
Yeah. And so as long as we're in that visionary stage, the practical person, great. Write down everything you think of. Write down every problem, every challenge, we're going to have to deal with this, right? And then once we're kind of done brainstorming, there needs to be an acknowledgement, a communication. Okay, are you visionary? Are you done with the brainstorming phase? Yes, I'm done. Okay.
Phase two.
Now we get practical. Now we answer the question, how are we going to do this? Should we do this? When are we going to do this? All the questions, right?
Let's put this in the real world. How is this actually going to happen?
100%. Because what you'll find is visionaries, we're great at ideas. We're not often great at execution. We actually need the practical people to help us execute and take these ideas and get them out into the world. And so I think then this phase it's a little more painful for the visionary, but this is a time to sit down and to be a little quieter. You can still contribute, but we're going to immediately defend and try to stop the practical person from killing the idea, right? But again, this is not either one of us is fighting against the idea.
You're adapting. You're making it work. If you both agree that this is a thing that you want to do and you want it to exist, then you have to just have the moment for both of these sides to come together and put their input in and evolve it in the way that it can work, adapt it to where it can be in reality.
Because one of two things is going to happen through that process. If the practical process is contained, you're going to land on one of two things. Either, oh my gosh, well, I guess one of three things. Turns out this was not a great idea, which is possible sometimes. You're going to land on, oh, this is a good idea, but we're not necessarily in the position to do this right now. Great. And we've talked about the big shelf of ideas. So now this idea goes on the shelf and we'll pull it down when we're ready. But we already kind of have a plan for when we are ready. And that helps us understand that.
That shelf is good for things like, this is really cool, but we acknowledge that it will be cooler later.
Yes, it'll be cooler later. Yes. And I think that's there's that third one, right? Of, oh, this is a good idea. We can do this. We do have the capacity. We do have the ability. Great. Now we're ready. And that third phase is what we call the agreement phase. So we have dreamed, we have figured out how we're going to do it. Now do we agree we're going to do this? Through this whole process, the goal is that it feels more like we are working as a team to develop the right solution.
Yeah.
To bring this thing to life versus the contentious, here's my idea, here's why that won't work, here's my idea, here's why that won't work. That's not fun for anybody. That's not fun for the visionary. That's not fun for the practical person. Yes, this is us together. And I think this very simple process is really what it looks like for us to work as a team to develop new ideas. Yeah. So I'm curious in our dynamic. Like, I think I very much land in the visionary. I do have practical moments.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I feel like both of us have an element of both of these things. Right. I think yours might be because you're in a healthy place to acknowledge that.
Oh, that's fair.
It might also, just be that you're able to see that these are both, you have this process. Yeah. And so you're able to kind of check your visionary brain a little bit.
Yes. Because I'm often okay with, hey, I have an idea. What do you think? And I value what you think. And so when you're like, hey, here's a reason that might not work. Okay, great. We're not going to sit here. It doesn't have to be a whole big thing. I'm open to the fact that my idea might not be perfect.
Right. So I think I am the more practical person. I think that's where my brain comes in. I think it's influenced heavily by the fact that I grew up in a super creative family. Yes. So my mom's a visual artist. Yes. My sister's a chef. We all have some kind of weird creativity moment happening. And I'm a designer. So I still have that creative brain.
Which requires a visionary kind of a
Right. But thinking. It is a lot more, even my design style is a lot more practical. Yes. And so I think that practical brain coming in and being like, okay, here, how do we problem solve this?
Oh my gosh, we don't have time to get into this, but going back to my previous business with marketing, like when I hired you, it was because you are that great mix of, I see the artistic side, but I also know this has to sell something, and so I'm going to be practical.
Good design's functional, right?
That's hard to find in that world. So okay,
yes,
I love this basic idea. So leaders, if you are one of these two, and you see the breaks that happen, you see the tension that happens when we don't know how to work through these things, deploy this. Very clearly defined. We are in the visionary part. We are not talking practical. We are talking dreams.
No limits.
No limits at all. But now, very clearly defined when we switch to practical. Now we are talking details. And then once all that's done, can we agree? Do we agree on what's next? And if you will just deploy that very simple 3-step process, always identify where you're at and communicate about it, that becomes incredibly helpful. I think we see organizations start to really move forward in a healthier way. All right. If people want to send us their own questions, their own challenges, where do they send that to?
lab@forwardpartners.net.
lab@forwardpartners.net. If they want to find us online on all the socials, where do they find us?
@forwardpartner.
@forwardpartner. Thank you for doing this. Danny, thank you for producing. Wilco Workspaces, thank you for partnering with us on this podcast. We will see you next time right here in the Leader Lab for Leadership Shorts.